Yesterday, my friend showed me the craziest video. It's of Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan Experience very recently. Podcast Cringe is the channel that we're going to be watching. They kind of break through it. Terrence Howard, apparently, the guy who was in the first Iron Man, he's in Crash, he's in a few other things. Basically, a D-list actor who's fallen into absolute obscurity, and he's been losing his mind in the meantime. We'll get into it. There's a lot to talk about.
That like from the womb.
From the womb, I had
So
to get
you
this
felt
done.
like you had these things that you didn't get out in a previous lifetime, and now you feel like an unstoppable urge.
I have to. I remember all of that.
You remember coming out.
Remember being compressed. You remember being born. I remember being circumcised. Like people say, well, what business do you have coming in here talking about science and all that? You're an actor. Here.
All right. He remembers being born. That's like not remotely possible. You can have some memories of like sounds and stuff, but there's no way you remember actual events. Especially like being born. I imagine when you first open your eyes, it's a pretty overwhelming and shocking experience, but not one that you would remember. You want to be able to comprehend what it is to see anything.
Here I've invented, here I'm an Oscar-nominated actor that is known all around the world, face recognition, vocal recognition, all around the world. I've invented a new form of flight, tangential flight, the ability to fly around your own center of mass.
So most of us know Terrence Howard as a Hollywood actor. You may remember him from such movies as Crash, Hustle and Flow and Iron Man, as well as the TV series Empire. But one thing you might not know about him is that Terrence claims to have studied chemical engineering and applied materials, even claiming to have completed a PhD in chemical engineering from South Carolina State University. Except here's the problem. That university doesn't offer degrees in chemical engineering, and Pratt Institute, where he said he obtained his undergraduate degrees, shut its engineering program down in 1993.
Now, even if Terrence Howard wasn't flat out lying about these education credentials, simply going to school and obtaining a degree, like this guy's still an actor. He's not worked in that field, and simply getting an education through like a university, that doesn't mean anything. Like he's flat out lying. As you'll see, he doesn't even, there's no way this man has ever even taken a high school level chemistry course. Like, he knows nothing of chemical engineering. But even if he did, even if he had that education, what he talks about is so outside of the realm of that, outside of the scope of that. It is just ridiculous.
So there's no actual...
I've never seen Hustle and Flow. I've never seen Empire. I've seen the other stuff, but I've heard Hustle and Flow is good.
record of Terrence having attended university at all. But that's only the beginning. To say that controversy follows this guy around would be an understatement. But I'll get to all of that because, as you saw in the intro, he was the latest guest on the Joe Rogan Experience, and no, you're not mistaken, he opened the podcast by describing his memories from being in his mother's womb, which he's able to re-enter to tackle advanced math, physics, and chemistry.
I think what actually happens is he's probably a fan of Joe Rogan. He's probably taken some like heavy hallucinogens and believes that to be an experience of him being in the womb, but really it isn't. As nothing that he's going to say is going to make any sense.
Now, if you think I'm joking, just you wait, because we're going to go through this step by step. So stick around. This was a wild one. And just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here, these are some of the top comments from YouTube. Terrence Howard is Cat Williams' final form. When Cat Williams finishes reading his 3,000 books, he turns into Terrence Howard. If Cat Williams interviewed Terrence Howard, they would just stare at each other and nod. 3-hour podcast, 9 seconds in, I woke up inside my mother's womb. This is what non-JRE listeners think every episode.
I think that's an important comment, because people who criticize listeners of Joe Rogan's podcast make no sense. Like, Rogan has a variety of interesting people on there. Yeah, you could say that his episodes where he like focuses on MMA are particularly uninteresting, or like his buddies a little too much. But outside of that, most of it is just like incredibly interesting people who he allows to like kind of pop off and talk about what their like expertise is in or what they like really like to talk about. That's a good thing to do. So anybody who just isn't into that fundamentally, they're just not a very interesting deep thinker. Not that like Joe Rogan is some spectacularly deep thinker, but he's a good interviewer and he has people on who are incredibly deep thinkers, and it's interesting stuff. It makes no sense to not be interested in a variety of topics. He just talks about too many different things. I don't get the criticism, but yeah, people clearly they imagine that this sort of rubbish is what Joe Rogan's podcast regularly is.
So it is. This is the longest Let Him Cook of all time. So yeah, like I said, this was a wild one. But let's go through some of his scientific theories before we get to all the controversial bits about his criminal history and getting fired by Marvel. First off, we've got his theory on 1 multiplied by 1 equaling 2 instead of 1.
Want a new career but don't have experience?
I don't want a new career, and I do have experience.
How is it that multiplication, if it means to make more and increase in number, how is 1 times 1 equaling 1 part of the multiplication table? Now, I understand that if you're seeing it one time, but the moment that you had that add the times in there, that multiplicative indicator, that means there is more than 1. You know, that equal sign is supposed to show that there's a balance between these 2 numbers over here and a balance on this 1 over here. What happened to the other 1 in this equation? It didn't equate. And then I took the square root of that number. I took the square root of 2, because all this started in 3rd grade. I was arguing with my teacher because we're talking about the square root of 100.
Okay, so if you're wondering what in the actual fuck he's talking about.
Now, obviously, what he's saying there is completely insane. You could say that the terminology in saying multiplying something, there's an implication there that it is increasing. If I say, give me your money, I'm going to multiply it. That's me telling you that I'm going to increase the amount of money that you're giving me or whatever. So there is that implication, but that's more to do with terminology. That's not to do with actually like doing math, actual mathematics. Like you talk about looking at an equation, the multiplication symbol doesn't mean that you have to increase whatever it is. That's just false. That's
Let me explain.
nothing.
3 multiplied by itself gives 9, and 3 plus 3 is 6. Apparently, that makes sense because 3 squared is a higher number than 3 plus 3. But then we have 2 squared equaling 4 and 2 plus 2 equaling 4. They're the same, and Terrence doesn't like that because one is a multiplication and the other is addition. He thinks multiplication should be bigger. And then there's the real problem. 1 squared is 1, but 1 plus 1 is 2. He can't have that because how can a multiplication be lower than the addition of a number with itself? So because 1 plus 1 is 2, which is higher than 1 squared, which is 1, therefore 1 squared must be 2, and that's his proof. He simply believes that when you're using the same numbers, the multiplied result should inherently always be greater than the result of the addition. But just keep that one in your back pocket for now because I want to move on to his reordering of the periodic table. Terrence has a theory that the ordering of the elements...
While it's still on screen, I'm going to talk about this. So the periodic table, it's organized by the weight, as you can see, as you go from left to right and then downward. That number at the bottom of the square goes up. That's the atomic weight. That's how much an atom of this element weighs. And then the columns or rows or whatever, as they go like beside each other, they have to do with the like valence electrons and thus how these elements react. So you have something like hydrogen has 1 valence electron, so it's going to react with stuff. Then you have the noble gases that like have that electron stability, so they're not going to react with stuff. This is a very good way to organize the table because stuff like reactivity is important. stuff like atomic weight is important. That's why, like,
on the table fails to realize the true relationship between the elements, and he uses this as a building block for Jesus walking on water. Now, again, if you think I'm joking, just wait, because we're only getting started.
And when you say rebuild the periodic table, what do you mean specifically?
Well, the way the periodic table is laid out, the periodic table they have now,
Let's see.
it looks like a box. You'll see hydrogen sitting all the way over there by itself, but they don't show that hydrogen has the same tone as carbon.
What do you mean by tone?
Same tone, same key of E, 40.5 hertz. The next one would be like 81 hertz. You go to silicon, it will double up and would be 162 hertz. You'll go to cobalt, and it'll be 324 hertz.
Okay, hold up. Let's try to understand this for a moment. Terrence is saying that the periodic table as it exists today doesn't accurately depict the tonal relationship between each element, which he understands to be the frequency at which each element vibrates. So like he said...
So that's completely pointless. Like, he talks as if the element vibrating, which you would have to ignore that, like, a lot about chemistry to like he doesn't understand molecules or atoms or cells. Very weird. But look at what you see here. You have things on the left, the far left: lithium, sodium, potassium. All these things are like super reactive, and then you have your noble gases on the right. They're not reactive. So like, organizing things in these categories is super freaking helpful. Or like, it just makes sense. It's practical.
Hydrogen should be...
There's no reason to organize. Does he have an example? I wish he would provide like a periodic table that's just simply designed, like organized. Is it just a list of like the resonance frequency, which is just the frequency at which, if you like crank sound at that frequency, you're going to cause something to vibrate? That's what resonance frequency is. Completely like pointless to anything. Like that's just not useful, right?
Be grouped with other elements like carbon that vibrate in the key signature of E. Now, he actually used this theory to patent a design for a propulsion system that he intends to develop with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to send into space to clean up all the debris left up there that's cluttering our solar system. But let me come back to that, because he actually gave a much better explanation of this theory when he did the Oxford Union interview back in 2017.
If you want to learn Python...
Now this is sad, like him actually, like at a school, saying this to students. Why? Why is he there? I mean, I'm all for free thought, and I think that it's very important that everyone questions science. That is truly is how science is done. But if you're talking about like core chemistry and physics, you're questioning like the center of science. You can't just be some like random actor and your like hypothesis is based off of nothing. Like, you have to actually have something of substance here. You're basically trying to rewrite a bunch of like most of chemistry. That's a step too far, right? Usually when people should be questioning science, it's like individual theories and like hypotheses that people come to that are questionable, that lack scientific integrity, right? Not like the core building block of chemistry. You would have to have a lot, like a practically immeasurable amount of substantive basis to go off of. Like, you have to have something significant enough to like really be diving that deep.
Energy the body transferred or understood the energy information through electricity. They're finding out it's through frequency. Well, guess what hydrogen sounds like? It's a key of E. Information used to be thought about as just electrical information passing on. But I've got a question for you. Have you ever been at a party with some of your friends you ain't seen in 10 years, but y'all was like 14, you hung out and there's a song that came on and you was like, "Ugh," and everybody got up and was live at that moment. Now say 10 years later you got a friend with you. He's a good guy, but he wasn't there when me and my boys formed this. So when that song comes on, our DNA tightens. There's a particular song, a scale in the genomes for each and every one of us. Now, when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out. Harmonic wave resequencing. So
Harmonic wave resequencing is what he just said. A song plays, you're enjoying it, you're vibing with the music. But what you're really vibing with is the vibration. And it's resequencing your DNA. Not just you, but your friends. And it's like collective. There's this like DNA tightening, and it's interacting between you and your friends, and you're like bonding. It's such pseudoscience gibberish. It's freaking incredible that he is saying this. The idea that, like, this guy has no understanding of what an atom is, what a molecule is, what a DNA molecule is, what a cell is. Like, DNA is stuff that's in your cells, and it's in, like, almost all your cells, right? Like, this is a molecule. How, like, sound functions in waves. You would have to be, like, for anything like that to even begin to make sense, you would have to all be, like, experiencing probably roughly around the same amount of sound throughout your body. Like, what does he not understand that, like, there's your skin cells on, like, the surface that would be, like, blocking sound from, like, going deeper into your body, like towards your core? And how are you resequencing DNA? Like, what do you, that's not a thing you could just do. Changing your DNA on the molecular level, changing the molecule. That's like giving you cancer. That's what it would be, or like worse. You can't just resequence DNA. That you'd be destroying it. Like, if you could do that, if this worked at all like that, you would be just like killing people. You can't just change somebody's DNA, right? Like, if you introduce other DNA into somebody, their like body is gonna reject it because it's not theirs. What the hell?
That the F over F sharps of the oxygen, the green, is only hitting at an F. Why? Because there's another frequency coming in from a generator over there. That's changing and causing it to change. So this F now hits the oxygen. Instead of hitting as an F sharp, it hits as an F, so when it hits the carbon at an E, it doesn't hit it quite right, so the domino don't file right. So the next domino hits wrong. And so now we have malformation happening within our DNA because the frequencies are being pushed off. But when we hear our tone...
What are you talking about? So if the sound is moving through you and it's interacting with things, maybe the air before it hits you, then it like hits your skin, works its way into your body, and it's like resequencing your DNA, but it's wrong because that frequency has interacted with all these other things and thus changed the frequency, and then it's corrupting your DNA. That's what's happening to people. What? Like, does it... What? He's just making stuff up. He has no clue what he's talking about.
We tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the...
If you could tighten your DNA, if you could... the last thing you would want to do to a person, is to change their DNA in any type of way. That sounds astronomically dangerous. why would you want to do that? Like, is he imagining DNA as like this like swirly ladder that's like covered in dirt that you have to like shake off, like you're like a dog shaking itself clean? Like, what is this guy smoking?
In the process of building the harmonic wave resequencer with another doctor who has been able to successfully.
A harmonic wave resequencer. He just said that the sound wave is playing like E sharp or whatever, or F, like, and then it plays E because it interacts with oxygen. Where are you going to be where there's not oxygen? Like, why would you be resequencing? Why would you be need to be changing the frequency? Like, first is the idea that you're gonna find the frequency that is gonna like hit oxygen and change frequency to exactly what you want it to be after that? How does that even, like, does this guy even not know what air is? Like, air is like mostly nitrogen. This guy has never taken a science class in his life.
Cure AIDS and cancer.
Okay, all right. So what he's saying here is that you can use this harmonic wave resequencing to repair malformations in our DNA where there's a class of frequencies which is supposedly the cause of defects such as cancer and AIDS. He came to this theory through the observation that a group of friends can enjoy the memory of a song together at a future date through a process that binds their DNA together, which happens naturally via the frequency mapped into their DNA from the initial experience of hearing the music together, due to the specific compounds generated by the harmonic frequencies of the music.
So, yes, what Terrence Howard, the actor, just said, this guy's never taken a high school science class in his life, knows nothing of chemistry and physics. His friend, doesn't name him, but his friend has cured AIDS and cancer through some frequency modifying machine. Even if you could find a frequency, right? Say you find the like resonance frequency for some component of cancer. Like, cancer's a mutation. I'm not exactly sure like chemically what it's made of, but probably similar stuff to what's already in your body. I feel like even if you could like attack it with such a thing, you're also just attacking yourself, just like other forms of cancer treatment like chemotherapy, where you're practically just poisoning yourself. But because the cancer is within you, it's also poisoning the cancer. You would have the exact same effect. The problem is just randomly doing it with some crackpot scientific theory that has no science behind it. That sounds incredibly dangerous, especially trying to do it on an atomic level. Like, let's ignore the fact that the elements, atoms, form molecules with other atoms. Like a molecule of let's say salt, sodium chloride, is a lot different than just like elemental sodium. Two completely different things. This guy, it's like, if you could, like, the damage that it could potentially do, the side effects could be devastating beyond what you could eat. Like, there would have to be almost like a century of like testing before anything like this could even be like trialed on a person. Maybe like this, and trying to control like a frequency, like hitting somebody with a frequency, it's a lot more complex than what he's making it out to be. But we're gonna break this into two parts. We're only 8.5 minutes into this video. I've already watched about 2/3 of it, so the last third of it I'm going in blind. But see in part 2, it does get weirder.